95% of all traders fail. They either walk away, they give up, or they just lose their accounts. They can't succeed at trading. And when the majority of the participants in the market are going to end up failing, yet we tend to follow the majority, then why would you be doing that? Because trading and following the majority, getting into that herd mentality, is going to ultimately lead you to failure if 95% of them are failures. And welcome back, everyone, to the Elevated Trader podcast. We are going into part 2 of Trading for a Living, the new Trading for a Living by Dr. Alexander Elder. Kristen, how are you?
I'm fantastic, Tracy. How are you holding up?
Oh, excellent.
Market's treating you pretty good?
It is. You?
Yeah, not too bad. Yeah. It's a little sketchy out there. I'm just definitely reducing risk and behaving more and more.
Well, there you have it. So we are into part 2 and part 3 of this book. And I'd like to know what you're thinking so far. What do you think about these 2 chapters? Or do you have any big takeaways or anything like that? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so these are pretty lengthy. What is standing out the most to me in these particular sections is how helpful the information would be to new traders, because it's basic information. Now, granted, he does go into, the mass psychology and things like that. And then that leads into, different oscillators and supports and resistance and stuff. But I think you kind of have to, like, the psychology of thought, because, his background is psychology. So I think that's what stands out the most in these 2 chapters. What about you?
Would this have been a good book to have in your arsenal when you first started trading?
So I know in the last episode, the beginning of the book, I talked about not recognizing some of the material. And it's because about 5, maybe 6 years ago, I listened to it as an audiobook. So I did actually listen to this book, and only parts of it are standing out, because I will read something and I'm like, oh, I recognize this. And I listened to it more than once. I actually can literally recall what gym I was in, what I was doing while. So that's how clear it is that I have listened to this book before. But I recall liking this book enough to listen to it at least twice. And I honestly think that I listened to it more than twice. But again, it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I don't recall. It's very my poor memory. I thought it was interesting in the beginning when he talked about comparing it to AA. And then I did think it was interesting in this section where he talks about mass psychology. So I do that does stand out from the past, but reading it again, obviously we're reading it and not being distracted by other things. So, I mean, I definitely think it would be helpful.
To your point, I do think that it's a great basis, I think, for a lot of new traders, because he goes into pretty much everything.
Yeah, he's going
that's
into
available.
a lot.
So it's kind of like a little trading Bible, but I'm finding there's a lot of attitudes, a lot of beliefs that I'm finding are being presented in the book that I don't necessarily agree with. One of them is an example how it's a zero sum, and I don't remember if I talked about this in the last episode, but the fact that there's a loser for every winner, I don't necessarily agree with that, because I do believe that you can sell to somebody who is buying because you are selling for a profit and they are buying, and it could be in the middle of a trend and it continues to go up, and they can make money too. So I believe that there's a potential for both types. I think that you can have losers in a trade, you can have winners in a trade, you can have winners and winners in a trade, you can have winners and losers in a trade. I believe you can even have losers and losers in a trade. So to be honest with you, I mean, it's possible that both sides could end up losing. So someone that's selling because they're in a losing position and you buy it and it continues to go lower, I mean, you just both lost from that. So it's it can definitely happen. So I don't necessarily believe in or agree with what he's writing there, but I do think that
I'm going to interject here, because you do know that I commented off mic, that I was a little frustrated. And I think what's happening is my frustration's coming out of things I may, as a now I dare say, seasoned trader, I still feel like in the beginning you're like crawling and you're in diapers, and then you're in elementary school, and then you're in middle school, and then you're in high school. And do you ever get to college? Do you ever get to grad school as a trader? Yeah, like after 30 years of trading. Okay, so let's back up. Where do I find myself today? I probably find myself in middle school. But I know for a fact, if you met me, 5, 6 years ago, I'd be like, I'm still learning to walk. Like I was, but I think I was gaining a lot of more information out of it before with naivety,
Yeah.
a beginner's outlook. And now, not being such a beginner, I can agree and slightly disagree because we're trading pretty much every day. I mean, we're in the trenches, and things are really different with the algos and the news, and we're trading futures, so that's crazy pants in itself. So I don't know. I agree with you. Like, it's good material. It's great for beginners, but would a seasoned middle school, high school, or graduate trader like it to this point? What do you think?
Well, again, it depends on the individual, because I firmly believe that it doesn't matter what you read, you can take from it what you want. And we had no, seriously, we had this discussion even with Money Grows on Trees, because I had already read the book a couple times, and reading through it the next time, I didn't get anything new out of it that I physically was reading from it. The epiphanies and the growth that I was getting from it was actually because I had already read the book, so it was actually encouraging new thought, reading it a second time, and I was doing different work and exploring different thoughts and going down those rabbit holes, and that provoked new growth. So, like even this book here, there's going to be opportunities, even in disagreement. You can formulate stronger bases of your own knowledge, foundations of your own knowledge. You can solidify your own knowledge a little bit better, even through disagreement. And I think that just builds your confidence as a trader, as an independent trader, which is significantly one of the other points that I pulled from these two parts, was the idea of encouraging and maintaining the ability to be an independent trader. And why is that important? And the thought that really provoked a lot of this for me, that I hadn't thought about before until reading this book. And it's not that like I said, it's not that there wasn't any new information. It's just it was presented in a way that created an opportunity for me to think of it in a different way. And that was the idea around how 95% of all traders fail. They either walk away, they give up, or they just lose their accounts. They can't succeed at trading. And when the majority of the participants in the market are going to end up failing, yet we tend to follow the majority, then why would you be doing that? Because trading and following the majority, getting into that herd mentality, is going to ultimately lead you to failure if 95% of them are failures. And that's an interesting concept to think about. And that's why it's extremely important to really develop your independent skills as a trader so that you can make independent decisions. And
I like that.
The thing that I've had to work through in my life as a trader is the confidence thing, because I have so many years experience, and there are tons of traders out there that I know, or that I've heard of, or that I've read of, or that have been mentors that have way more experience than me. They've been in the markets a lot longer. So does time in the markets give you a leg up and an expertise over the knowledge that I have? Maybe, but maybe it also doesn't, right? And so I've had to work through trusting my own instincts and trusting myself, because there's always going to be somebody out there that's better, or there's somebody out there that's been in the markets longer, that knows more, that's read more, whatever they might. But the reality is there's no guarantees in the market. The difference between a new trader and a seasoned experienced trader is the seasoned experienced trader is better at managing. They're better at trading with the odds. They're better at setting up more successful trades. It's not because they can predict the direction of the market. Nobody can predict the direction of the market. I don't care who you are. You can say you predict the market, and maybe one or two times it happens, but nobody knows what's going to happen with the market any day of the week. They just don't.
Right.
So the fact of the matter is that trading isn't about prediction. It's about getting context. It's about creating a plan and then executing that plan and managing it. And the only way that you can execute a plan is by following the plan. And if you allow mass psychology to kick in and allow group psychology to kick in that starts affecting your decision making, that's where people start to deviate from their plans. That was pretty long-winded, but I hope that makes sense.
Knowledge Bombs by Tracy Ball, right there.
It is.
Taking it all in.
I've been in trading communities, and I love being part of a trading community. Love it, love it, love it. For the aspects of being in a trading community where I can share ideas and I can grow as a trader and have individuals around me that can also speak the language, I guess, and understand kind of what I'm going through. But the part of a community that I don't work well in, and this is me personally, I don't work well in this, is where someone's talking about the trade they're taking, or they're getting in here and they're getting out there and they're setting up trades. I don't work well in those environments because it fights against my confidence. It fights against my own independent thinking. And I find that challenging to overcome. I will submit to another person's expertise over my own knowledge. And that puts me in very bad position. So I recognize that about me and know that it's not a good scenario for me. So I stay part of a community for a multitude of different reasons. But one of them is not to follow somebody else's trade. That's
if the trades are going against your trading plan, how could you possibly?
Well, again, because here's the thing, for me, when I am looking at a trade, I can see an argument for a long, I can see an argument for a short. And the thing with bias, or the thing with the confidence, if you don't have confidence, or your confidence is easily shaken for whatever reason, or you can see things from both sides, individuals that can start to make that argument, if you are susceptible to believing that they're better than you, or susceptible to putting their thinking ahead of yours, then that's exactly what can happen. It can undermine your own confidence because you start to doubt what you're seeing. Because like I said, there's an argument. There's a buyer and a seller in every market. So in every single transaction, there's a buyer and a seller. In every single transaction, there's a reason that somebody's selling, and there's a reason that somebody's buying. So those reasons exist. And if you can see both of those reasons, all it takes is one person to say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. And you start to doubt the direction, or you start to second guess the direction that you were going to go in. That's all I mean. And maybe it's just that I don't have enough experience yet, but that's been my experience so far, that I trade poorly in those environments. I struggle big time. So I've learned how to cope by maintaining my independence through trading alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot to be said for people that are in those rooms that are learning by watching somebody else trade.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. So
yeah, absolutely. But that's the thing, is they don't have the knowledge or the plan at this point. I'm talking about, because I was in those as well, and I was learning from them and trying to develop my own plans. But once I started to step out and become the trader that I am today, that's where I started to have to, I really had to be careful.
Yep, for sure.
Right? Because it takes a tremendous amount of willpower and a tremendous amount of conviction to be able to look at somebody that you respect, disagree with their opinion, and hold your own, right? That's the problem, is when you have respect for somebody else, you appreciate and you acknowledge their expertise, but you differ in the opinion. That's, like I said, I'm more likely to submit and say, And that's a personality flaw. Well, I don't know if
It's
it's a
not a
flaw, but
flaw.
it's a personality quirk in me that I recognize that I have to deal with, right? Because otherwise it doesn't
Yeah,
serve me well in that
correct.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah, and so recognizing that's huge for sure. I
Yes.
agree with that. But I
Yeah.
also think that if somebody is finding themselves in that situation, it means that you're in an interesting place for massive growth.
Oh, for sure.
So if you find yourself doing that, because I remember being a part of a different community that we met in,
Hmm.
and I remember seeing the trade setup and such, like, and then they would take it. And I'm like, and that happened enough times that I literally said, because I was on the phone with a friend and we were kind of doing the same thing. And I was like, why are we in this group again? Like, why do we come in here in this every morning? And so, anyways, I just thought it was funny. That was a trip, but yep.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, well, and using a different type of trading system.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
not
And that's
using their system, but still like it's,
exactly.
oh, you do futures. I love futures. So, but then I didn't really gel with the system. I already had my system in place. So I was like in this room, and then I was kind of like, oh, yeah, this isn't serving me. So we've done that. We've both done that for different reasons, but we've both
Hmm.
done that. And then there is that moment of like, oh, that's, to me, that's growth.
Hmm.
And so it's not a flaw to recognize that, right? It's like, oh, expanding in your dreams.
Exactly. So there's kind of a stage in your development as a trader, and it starts out by not knowing what to do. And I completely appreciate the ability to have someone show you how to do it. I think
Yep.
that's a great starting point. And but at some point, you will have to outgrow that if you want longevity in the markets. You'll need to outgrow it and
Oh
become
boy.
more, yeah, become more of an independent trader. And that's where, when you get to that level where you become an independent trader, that's where the doors just blow wide open because you have control now. You have control over what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it, and you can dictate what your future is going to be. And
Yep.
that's what I want. So that's my goal, and I'm gonna hang on to it, right? But
Yep.
like I said before, I still love being part of a community, regardless, for other aspects of it, not
Yeah.
necessarily the trading setups. So yeah,
Yeah. It's interesting because
yeah,
we both trade well together, when we do get, when Tracy and I are trading together, but it's because we are independent.
absolutely. I mean, there's times where I'll turn to you. You're in short right now? Oh, because I'm in long.
And
You're
so
winning
yeah.
and I'm winning. And that's the cool thing about the market, right? Is
Yeah,
that
I
you're
can.
still winning and I'm still winning, even though we're in opposite directions in the market,
Yep.
just at different times, right? So it's pretty cool. But that's the nice thing. You and I get to talk about what we're doing, but we don't influence each other's decision making. And that's really the key to growth, I think. But anyway.
Anything really stand out as far as the psychology? Because he does go through some basics here. There's no crystal ball, learning to read the market, manage yourself. For example, like this one, successful trading stands on three pillars. You need to analyze the balance of power between the bulls and the bears. You need to practice good money management. You need personal discipline to follow your trading plan and avoid getting high or depressed in the markets. Which
Hmm.
one of those do you think people struggle with the most?
Probably the emotional part,
Mm,
the highs and lows, right? That's what I'm thinking. I could be wrong, but I know that's probably been my biggest challenge is the highs and the lows, feeling like you're invincible and feeling like you're the worst. And it's been hard to remove that emotional part and have the trading independent from your own self-worth.
I would
That's
say
been
they're
for me.
tied. That
Yeah.
that one and the discipline. Like
Mm.
in a
Yeah.
group of like
Yeah.
500 people,
Yeah.
because you have like stoic people that lack discipline,
Hmm.
but then you have emotional people that have discipline.
Hmm.
So it's interesting. And let's don't mix. One of the things that I had a revelation with is thinking you have lack of discipline when it's really your trading plan or your rules are jacked and need to be altered, maybe because of the market being changed.
Hmm.
That I had to deal with that because I was like, Are you having lack of discipline, or are your rules not really set up properly? Is your plan not really set up properly? So I don't know. I felt like sharing that.
To me, that's the key right there. You want discipline, you have to buy into it first. You have to buy into what you're doing. And if you don't buy into what you're doing, you're not going to do it. And that's just the reality of it. So you can do all the different challenges in the world to try and build discipline. But if your core, if your inner self, your being disagrees wholeheartedly with what you're doing, you're not going to do it. And yeah, that's kind of that. Now, there are two other things that came up in this that I really liked.
Okay.
One of them was he did highlight how different, and I like this, how he goes through, because I'm not an indicator person. I don't like using indicators. I've talked about this before where I think they're all lagging. The only thing that's really leading is volume and price. But
I like them. And I'll
the
tell
thing
you
that
why in a minute.
the thing that he did make clear is that, some of them work better in trends. Some of them work better in sideways markets. And I find that is really key in a lot of traders. They get into one system, but they forget to identify where they are in a market. And the system either stops working for them and then they start losing and they blame the system, or they take huge losses instead of recognizing that each of these little systems are tools in the toolbox. And I think he even mentions in there how you can use different tools and actually use a tool, like a physical tool. If you're going to go hammer a nail, you go and grab a hammer. If you're going to tighten a nut, you go and grab a wrench. And that's kind of synonymous with what's happening in the market. So if the market's going sideways, you want to use kind of an oscillator that's going to show you when the market is topping, when the market's bottoming, when it's getting oversold, overbought, those types of things. But when you're doing a trend, you're going to want to use an indicator that is more conducive to trend following. So like a moving average, etc. So I liked that he really pointed that out, because I think a lot of newer traders just get stuck on one thing and they forget to identify the context of where they are. And that's where they get hurt and frustrated, and they wonder why they give up because they don't know what they're doing. They think, I don't know what I'm doing. But the fact of the matter is they just were missing one little component, one part. And that's probably the key component. And if they just got that, it would make a world of difference in their trading.
Yeah.
Why do you like indicators?
Well, it's funny because before you went into carpentry work, I was thinking of very similar to a carpenter and their toolbox, because there are people that will use the end of a screwdriver and not go get the hammer. Or, vice versa. We've all done something silly where we probably shouldn't have used that tool, wasn't designed for what we're getting ready to use it for, and then we break it, right? So to me, some of the indicators are like tools in the toolbox. And you can use all kinds of different tools for one project, but you're not going to use, a planer in every project. But with a planer, you still may use a level, but you may use a level to hang a picture, which you're going to need a nail, So to me, when they're all lining up for the same purpose, big picture, medium picture, smaller picture, time frames, right? Then there's that congruency. But as soon as you have this one isn't going with this one isn't going with this one, then that's a sign too. So, but again, first of all, if I'm using an indicator, I researched it. I watched a ton of YouTube videos on it. I can't even tell you, that used to be my thing. The Tracy Ball that knows me right now knows that I pretty much listen to a lot of motivational videos. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to a lot of clips of self-development, people that I follow. But when I was learning to trade, I was doing my runs and doing my workouts, listening to everything about trading. And if I was like, someone talked about an oscillator or an indicator, I was backwards and forwards, give me the data around it. And if it worked, if it gelled with me, I went and threw it on a chart. And then I would make different charts and study them and watch them. And if I got it and liked it, then it would probably stick around. And have they all stuck around? No, but have a couple of them stuck around for 5 or 6 years? Absolutely. And so the only other one I thought was very unique was when we read, help me with the title, the Japanese candlestick, the original candlestick book.
Candlesticks Explained.
Okay, so that's like goes back all the way till like why and how candlesticks even came about, right?
Mm-hmm.
He talked about that in sync one, which was multiple different indicators. I think it was 4 indicators into one.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a bullish and a bearish, and then don't don't mingle in the middle. So I watched that one because I knew what it meant. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to watch all of these. I've got this one. So do you remember how it was spelled for our listeners? N-C-N-S-Y-N-C, I think.
Yeah, that's the way it was spelled.
It's kind
Yeah.
of a guess.
In
And I
sync.
did find
Yep.
it in TradingView.
Yes,
There's only
you did.
one. Shh, don't tell anybody. Just kidding.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, you got to find what's going to work for you. I know that they don't work for me. I know that. And part of it is because I will see a trade set up and I'm thinking I should get in. The indicators aren't showing that because again, they're lagging. But by the time the indicator shows it, I feel like I've missed the move. So there's this constant battle between no, and then I hesitate, and then it becomes a nightmare for me. So I have found identifying value and knowing where value is and what's happening there and using the volume profile has been the way that works well with my brain. And I'm not saying that works well for everybody. You got to do what you can do. And that's why there's tons of indicators out there and all sorts of stuff. That's exactly why, because not everybody sees things the way that everybody else does.
I love it.
And that's the reason why the markets work. And we've talked about that before, right? If we all saw things the same way, the market would never do anything. It would just sit there waiting because everyone would want to buy at this exact price at this exact time. And there'd be nobody else that would want to sell. So, you got to find what works for you, and that's going to give you an edge in the market. That's it. Not necessarily my edge, not necessarily Kristen's edge, but your edge. It's going to give you the edge that you need to be competitive in this industry. So,
yep. I'd like to talk about just a couple other things that stood out. And they're just basically just quotes, so to speak. Like this one particular line, he's actually quoting Milton Friedman, but he's talking about price action, what price looks like in consolidation, what price looks like in resistance and support. And so he's kind of explaining that, which I think is good information, because then that goes back to his original start of all this is about mass psychology. But that prices carry information about the availability of supply and the intensity of demand. I thought that was interesting if you think about it in more of a supply-demand situation. And then I thought this was kind of fun to talk about briefly, because right now we are actually, today is November 8th. And so we in America, Tracy Ball, as you well know, because we talked about this morning, but we're voting. And we happen to be in 2022, if anybody is, listening to it at a different date, where it's been just a choppy sideways market. And it's been pretty brutal on a lot of people. But it just says, if you trade during chaotic periods, the only ones that benefit will be your broker, who'll collect all the commission, and a professional day trader will scalp you. The key point to keep in mind is that once in a while, a pattern emerges from the chaos, and then it goes into, how your system would fit into that. So I thought it was fun to talk about right now, because maybe some people need to watch out for those scalpers.
There you go. So, well, and one other thing that I pulled out of this, I had never heard of the term kangaroo tail. That was a new term to me. So for anyone
I'd never heard of perfect order, which is the crowd that gravitates to astrology, numerology, conspiracy theory, and other superstitions. I had heard about that, but not that it actually has a name. And he actually talks about it in this book. I was like, okay,
interesting.
wow.
Yeah. No, I hadn't heard about that. And I'm guessing a kangaroo tail is a hammer. That's kind of basically what
are you guessing that?
I'm gathering based on his description that a kangaroo tail is a hammer. So I just thought that was interesting on a side note. But anyway, guys, stick around. Part 3 coming up next week. We'll see you then.